Can you beat Pokemon only using Pokemon? I mean, of course you can, right? That's literally the premise of the game. Is that a joke or something? And honestly, when I first thought of the premise of this video, I thought it would be a joke, a satire of a challenge run where I just play the game. That is until I started to really think about what it means to only use Pokemon. And once you restrict the definition down that much, it becomes legitimately impossible to beat the game. Straight up spoilers, you cannot beat Pokemon by only using Pokemon. So this video is less about whether you can complete the game or not, and more about identifying what it actually means to only use Pokemon, and correspondingly seeing how that forces us to play the game. Normally challenge run videos would lay out all the rules at the beginning of the video, but there are way too many stipulations for us to do that. So what we're gonna do is we'll talk about them as we go through the video. So for now, we'll start with two simple rules. 1, you can only use Pokemon, and 2, you can't use any glitches. And without any more preamble, let's crack open a Pokemon Platinum certified Nintendo cartridge and see what it takes to beat Pokemon only using Pokemon. And we're off! And off we go! Huzzah! 4th! Except no, because moving isn't using a Pokemon, it's moving. I don't even have a Pokemon yet, so how could I be using one? So for anyone that thought we'd fail the challenge one step into the game, you are correct. And for everyone else, well, welcome to the bullshit stringiness of this challenge. Now, I don't want to end the challenge here, so each time we get to a point like this, where we are forced to fail to continue, then we do so. But we must try to fail as few times as possible. And I'll go into more depth about what this actually means when we approach better examples of it. So let's actually move. And the second you do take your first step, kablam! Your friend comes out of nowhere and starts yapping your ear off, and all of a sudden, we're back to doing something that isn't using a Pokemon, engaging in dialogue. So let's add dialogue to the list of rules we are required to break, a list which can be regarded as our list of fails. This means we're only allowed to get into conversations that are mandatory to progress through the game, and anytime we do enter a conversation, which I consider to be when the dialogue box pops up, that's another fail added to the tally. And to help keep track, I'll put how many fails we have at the end of each section ending after we defeat a gym leader and stop talking to them. But before we even leave our house, those particularly astute members of the audience will know that the conversation with your rival isn't your first conversation. It's the second. I just wanted to start off with some simple fails that were easy to recognize as not using Pokemon. But now that we're all on top of the concept, let's wind back to the very beginning of the game and see how many times we've already failed this challenge before we even get control of our character. So opening the game, you begin watching this fun intro cutscene, which ends with the title card, which you cannot get past unless you press A, which isn't using a Pokemon and in turn a fail. And technically, this is where the run dies. So for all those that predicted the end of the run to be the title card, you were correct. And when I said before that anyone who predicted we'd fail the run one step into the run was correct, well, I lied. You were actually wrong and a bunch of optimistic fools. Anyway, the same dilemma appears when trying to start the game. Both of these are fails and part of a category I'm going to refer to as menuing, which is any time the game requires you to use any sort of menu. This makes up our second category for failing. Now to me, each instance of menuing isn't about the number of button presses, so pressing up, down, left and right to move through menus don't each add a fail. A fail is added each action completed. This same concept applies to dialogue. Not every single text box is its own fail. One conversation is just one dialogue fail. Once you start a game, Professor Rowan will talk to you, which is a mandatory conversation and a fail. During this conversation, you have to select a couple options, and every time you need to make a choice, that's a form of menuing. The false dichotomy of selecting whether you are a boy or a girl, a form of menuing. Naming yourself and your friend, 2 more fails. Even pressing the touchpad is a fail. After all of this, plus a few other fails, you finally get control of your character, already having 10 fails to your name. Now I recognize that we're not very far into the game, but don't worry, the whole video isn't like this. The beginning just heaps a ton on you. Once we get out of the de facto tutorial, the rules really start to change, and the challenge aspect of the run really kicks in. From here on out, I'll talk about all the unique challenges that are being posed and what is required to get around them. But for the sake of progress and feeling like there's some compulsion to this video, I'm gonna start jumping forward in time, skipping around a little bit, rather than showing every new stipulation that comes in, because otherwise we'd be here at the beginning of the game forever. So let's discuss Pokemon battles, of which there are 2 main forms. trainers and wild Pokemon, both of which sort of have unique workarounds and to a degree make you philosophically question the very premise of the challenge. Trainers are much simpler. Anytime you get into a trainer battle, the trainer first talks to you, which is a fail. This means that you have to avoid every single trainer battle you can, making this a minimum trainer run. Something I wasn't expecting, but I really like. Wild Pokemon, on the other hand, are a little more complex, because does starting a battle with a wild Pokemon count as a fail? To me, there are enough components which could count. You are forced to watch an animation, you start a battle, which isn't using a Pokemon, you throw the Pokemon out, which is using the Pokeball, not the Pokemon. All fairly weak individually, but collectively strong enough to make it a fail. This reasoning is hammered home because if you run from a battle where you haven't used a Pokemon, you've still undeniably done something. So I'm counting this whole experience as one wild Pokemon battle. And these two types of battles together make up for our third category for failing: battles. Quick rule sidebar. This also means that trainer battles are technically two fails, the dialogue and the battle itself. But to make it simpler, I just count this as one battle fail, but under its own special subcategory called trainer battles. And there's quite a few fails that are actually multiple fails, but are just given their own subcategory. All in all, meaning not all fails are created equal. This is where the varying ideology comes into play though, because if the purpose is to have the fewest fail, then there are certain instances when opening the menu, then using a repel, a total of 2 fails, is going to prevent more than 3 battles, leading to a lower number of total fails. So there is a world where going to the Pokemart and copying the 4 fails you get from buying up a bunch of repels and strategically using them will lead to lower total fails. And this is a totally valid form of the challenge, but it's not really what I'm interested in. Firstly, because it's too much business and makes this already difficult and restrictive challenge too finicky to plan and actually do. Secondly, I feel like electively choosing to fail because it leads to less fails / makes the run easier goes against the spirit of the challenge and just kind of resembles a normal playthrough, but I'll talk more about this later. So the solution I came up with is you need to avoid wild Pokemon when possible. You can't grind in the wild or actively seek them out for experience, but this is balanced out nicely by the fact that you are forced to fight the ones you encounter. Speaking of fights, let's quickly talk about your options during actual battles. It should be fairly obvious, but you really only have one option: fight. You can't use items, you can't run, and I think switching Pokemon is debatable, but not really valid. Sure, you can argue, well, I'm using the new Pokemon to tank damage, or I'm using them to give myself the advantage. And well done on your twisting of words, but it's pretty clear to me that the only true use of a Pokemon is using their moves. So let's get into some battles, the one thing you are able to actually do. So you and your Piplup will do a good job, take out some Pokemon and win a bunch of battles. But eventually Piplup's health will drop and you will need to heal. But how? How do you heal? You can't use items because that's not using a Pokemon, and you can't go to the Pokemon Center because you have to initiate a dialogue, then make a choice, so you're breaking multiple rules. So what do you do? Well, the only option is to just white out. Let Piplup fight its best fight, and when it dies, it just dies. It's not like you need the money, you can't ever spend it, nor would you be able to use the items you buy anyway. Now, whiting out is still a fail. There's a dialogue that appears and your Pokemon get healed, which is a no-no, but it only counts as one fail, making it the best and most efficient option. As far as categorization goes, whiting out is just its own fail and doesn't fit into any of the other categories, mainly because it just felt right. But also because whiting out isn't consistent from run to run. So having the least amount of whiteouts act as some sort of ultimate goal for judging the best run seemed kind of fun to me.
Similarly, I considered Meuing to be judged in the same way.
Now that we have a good understanding of the core rules, let's take a rule respite and focus on what playing the challenge actually looks like. Because Pokemon only changes the way you approach the game in its entirety. 2 major changes happen to the game. The first is that the game becomes incredibly linear. If you can't electively fight trainers or wild Pokemon, all too often there's just one single trainer you need to beat before you can move forward, and you aren't allowed to do anything but battle that single trainer. With this, I started using Pokemon Centers as checkpoints. Despite not being able to use them, I would enter a town Pokemon Center to make my respawn point close by. which in this challenge is incredibly important, because the second major change flips your perception on dying in Pokemon games. Playing through Pokemon normally, it's likely you beat the game without ever whiting out, and Nuzlockes prove you can beat the game fairly easily without ever having your Pokemon faint. But if you are strapped into the train tracks of the game and aren't able to do anything else but move forward, then death is an inevitability. If you're fighting a bunch of trainers and a bunch of wild Pokemon and you're taking damage as you go, eventually your Pokemon will faint, and this death becomes a vital tool that you will use. These two things together completely overhaul the Pokemon experience. It's no longer a mildly open world game which gives you a bunch of freedoms and choices. It's now an entirely prescribed experience where there is often only one single option you can take, with your agency singularly available during battles, as you are allowed to choose what moves you use. This admittedly might sound a little bit off-putting, but as someone who's played thousands of hours across dozens of games doing multiple different challenge runs, this is by far the most unique one that I've ever done, hands down. And to me, there's something fascinating about having one single rule: you can only use Pokemon, and seeing how this completely shrinks the experience to something incredibly specific. And it's really fun to see if you can figure out what that single experience is and just brute force your way through, ultimately finding out if you even can brute force your way through. Is it possible to beat the game? The biggest way this affects the game is it makes certain battles, especially boss battles, actually hard. They become genuine challenges. If you need to fight a particular trainer next, then that's the only thing you can do until you beat them. Often how this goes is that you go against the trainer and lose, but you take out a couple of its Pokemon, gaining experience and leveling up. You try a couple more times and eventually you'll become a high enough level that you are able to beat the trainer and move on. A fun new twist on leveling up and grinding. It took me 7 attempts to beat Rourke and the Galactic Commander Mars, and even though it's annoying to lose, you actually feel like you're making progress, and it's much more satisfying to actually win against someone that has beaten you, a feeling almost completely bereft from regular Pokemon. And when I did manage to beat Rourke, I did so racking up 130 fails, which is way more than I was expecting for this early in the game, and really makes you start to think about how many fails we might encounter across this entire challenge. That's if we can complete the challenge, because with this one-way forward style of progression, if there is a trainer that has a first Pokemon you can't beat, then you don't get any experience, and if there's no other trainers to verse, then you can't level up and you can't beat that trainer. And this is almost what happened with Gardenia. I went up against the second gym leader Gardenia with a level 24 Prinplup, and she throws out a level 20 Turtwig, a terrible matchup. I currently have Tackle, Growl, Bubble, and Rock Smash. It has Reflect, Razor Leaf, Grass Knot, and Sunny Day. The combination of Reflect and Razor Leaf make it incredibly bulky while being able to kill me in 3 hits. Worse even, if you ever get Turtwig in the red, she will use a Super Potion on it, making it basically impossible to take down. I failed to kill this Turtwig the first 8 times I went up against it, and when I did, it gave me a measly 273 experience, which is about 1/6 of what I needed to level 25. I had also just gotten to level 24, and I'm glad I did, because it would have taken so much longer at level 23, and I'm not sure if it would have really been possible at level 22 or 21. And we must praise the fact that Gardenia sandbags and hasn't evolved her Turtwig into a Grottle, even though she could have, because this would make the run impossible. Now, I played around with the strategy a bit till I found out that just all-out rock smashing was the way to go. Now, it's very lucky Rock Smash has a chance to lower defense, because without it, you would not be able to beat this Turtwig. Even still, you are hoping for some lucky defense lowering status effects, ones which will let you get it straight from the orange to fainting, because if they use a potion, you won't win. This needs to be combined with some non-optimal uses of Reflect, Razor Leaf, and Sunny Day. If you can get a couple of Reflectless hits, that's amazing, and anytime Sunny Day is used, that's basically a free turn. And when you get the right run, you gain some experience and will eventually level up. And this basically becomes the pattern for this battle, along with a bunch of others. You do the battle, hope you beat the first Pokemon, and slowly level up to the point where you can start beating the second Pokemon, which when you do, feels incredible. This will take a while though, because Cherrim, Gardenia's second Pokemon, is no slouch. It has Leech Seed, a move which will doom your whole run, along with Grass Knot, Magical Leaf, and Safeguard, It basically only used Magical Leaf, and fair play because that consistently killed me. But eventually I became strong enough and I was able to get to Roserade. But I was so battered by then, it just wiped me off the map. It's a strong Pokemon with a Citrus Berry that has Magical Leaf, Poison Sting, Stun Paw, and Grass Knot. Once again, it only really does Magical Leaf, which is enough to kill you. Now, I knew I would be able to eventually beat this battle because if I kept leveling up, I'd beat Empoleon, and once I had the Steel typing, I wasn't scared. This isn't quite what happened though. Weirdly enough, I managed to beat Roserade at level 35, giving me enough experience to get to level 36, and evolved, which made for the second gym in a row I evolved after finally beating it. Although Rourke only took me 7 attempts and I leveled up quite quickly. Meanwhile, Gardenia took me 125 attempts, totaling 349 fails for this section. 479 for the run so far. I will say this could have been very tedious, but luckily I have a feature which speeds up my certified Nintendo DS cartridge version of Pokemon Platinum, so I was able to do an attempt, a battle, fail, white out, and get back to the gym in less than a minute, meaning the whole thing took less than 90 real minutes. And to be honest, I always knew the second gym would be rough for a water starter, but this was the first time I realized if there's only one battle you can take and you can't beat its first Pokemon, then the run is impossible. I've been thinking that the Elite Four is going to be hard, but it's perfectly possible we never get there. That's in the future though. Right now we have 2 badges under our belt. Let's take some time to actually discuss my Pokemon, because Piplup, or Empoleon now, is the star of the show, and yet has received no love or recognition so far. They've been backseated to dastardly legislation, an experience all too common for a penguin. Right off the rip, why haven't I nicknamed them? Well, when the game gives you an option to name anything, that's one decision and one fail, but the naming of the actual thing itself is also a fail. Because to me, there are only 2 things that classify as actually using your Pokemon. The main one being having it use moves in battle, and the secondary one having it use HMs outside of battle. That's it. Everything else is a fail. For example, leveling your Pokemon counts as a fail because the leveling is a consequence of it being used and not an example of it being used. Similarly, when it evolves, that's a fail. Now luckily, letting it evolve leads to less fails, both because if you prevented it from evolving, it would try to evolve every subsequent level, and watching the animation is a fail. Meaning it's the better choice to just let it evolve, which is a real win. Neither of these really affect the gameplay, they just add a bunch of fails to the already enormous list. But there is one aspect surrounding Pokemon which is affected: the moves it learns. Learning moves, just like leveling up or evolving, is undoubtedly highly related to using Pokemon, but the act of learning the move isn't specifically it being used. And as such, we need to defer to whatever results in the least amount of fails. Unsurprisingly, and rather annoyingly, this makes rejecting new moves the path we must take. This is something I did not predict at all, and is why we didn't have Peck, Fury Cutter, or Bubble Beam during the Gardenia fight, a collection of moves which would have made the fight a lot easier, especially Peck. By level 36, we've already rejected 7 moves, so ultimately we're only allowed to learn the first 4 moves the Pokemon can learn, plus, of course, the HMs which are required to beat the game, which is why we picked the Water type, because we need Piplup, or Empoleon, to learn Surf, Waterfall, and why it has Rock Smash already. It's the same reason Empoleon is forced to learn Cut after the second gym, because if you don't learn Cut, you can't get into the Galactic Building, and you can't progress through the game, making 2 of your Pokemon's moves Rock Smash and Cut, which is not a top tier move list, but don't worry, it's currently being rounded out with Growl and Bubble, a 20 base power move in Gen 4. Cool. Also, everything I just talked about, leveling up, evolving, learning and rejecting moves, all of these are our 4th category for fails, which I simply called Pokemon. Now that we've addressed using HMs, we can talk about using items as a whole, which is the name of our 5th and last major category for fails. We've talked about items a little so far, the main thrust being obviously you can't use an item inside or outside of battle. You're not going to pick up an item outside of battle because what use is it anyway, plus it activates a dialogue box and that's a fail. Despite this, the game constantly throws items at you, most of which you are forced to receive, and some of which you are forced to use. both of which apply to the HM cut. In fact, before activating the HM cut, you've already received a total of 21 items and used 6. Some include mandatory items like the clown coupons or the workshop key, which are required to progress through the story, and others are useless and they're things you can never use. Pokeballs, various TMs, almost all special items, but even things like the Pokedex, Trainer Card, or Pokenav are items forced into your pockets but are something you can never dare to even think about using. Anytime you receive an item, that's one item fail. Anytime you use an item, that's one item fail. And anytime you use an item from your bag, that's multiple fails. A menuing fail, a dialogue fail for having to select the item, an item fail for actually using the item. And for things like HMs, this is even more so. When it comes to using required items, it's pretty simple. If you have to use them to progress through the game, then you do what you need to do. Simple as that. In the case of the bike though, things are a little different because the bike isn't just about getting around to the next area, it's about movement, and is usually one of the most useful and highly regarded items in the game because, in short, it makes you go fast. With this said, when you are forced to hop onto it for Cycle Road, you are still going to set it as your key item because this lowers the total fails. But having it quick selected isn't an endorsement for use, no. Using it straight up is not allowed, and you may have even noticed that I've been walking everywhere, because you also can't use the running shoes. Whether they're an item or an ability, it doesn't matter. Using them is doing something that isn't using a Pokemon, out of nowhere making this a walk-only challenge. Seismically upping its intolerability, kind of, because for me, and I'm sure many others, I just use the neat little trick that all certified Nintendo DS cartridges have, where you speed up the game, making walking really not all that slow at all. If you can't do this, then 100% run and use the bike. Fuck walking, make this challenge bearable. Let's actually make some quick progress now, because we've been sitting in the early game for quite some time. Progress which is going to be quite a bit easier because despite the piss poor moveset, the power level isn't too bad. And this is completely offset by the fact that you are fully evolved and way higher level. So let's just zoom through the next part of the game. Cycle Road, much like most routes, is actually puzzle-like in a platformy kind of way, because you are actively trying to dodge the trainers, so a part of the challenge is now trying to find a way through the route, which leads to having the least amount of battles. I'm sure I could have just looked this up, but it's fun to figure out the optimal route. Usually I just battle everyone. So this is a total shift of gears, and yes, that's a bike pun. This carries through the next gym, which you get to really quickly after only one fight against a Galactic Commander, one other trainer battle, and 12 dialogue fails. And for the first time in this gym, I actually felt a little tense when trying to dodge the trainers and solve the puzzle. I felt like I had to be smart about finding my way through and correctly identifying which door was the correct one to go through. I snuck my way through, met Fantina, and quickly wiped it out the first time, since I only had 12 health. But I did manage to tank 2 hits and live, including a Miss Magius magical leaf. Losing changed up the puzzle, and boy did I feel good when I sauntered through like a pro. There's not much to say about this gym, I just used Bubble, the only move that actually hits her ghost-type Pokemon, and somewhat poetically, I beat Fantina with 12 health left. This battle also felt like a predecessor for things to come, because while we saw Empoleon's impressive tankiness on display, as I was barely taking damage, I was also doing fuck all damage, barely whimpering at them with my 20 base power Bubble. Either way, I won, with it only really being close because I was confused and did most of the damage to myself. But this certainly put the fear in me if there is ever a more aggressive confusion strategy done by a Pokemon that can actually hurt me. This also marks the fastest section, with only 39 total fails between the second and third gym, only taking 1,502 steps. A number which you can uniquely track super easily in Gen 4 because they have an app on the Pokenav. With an extra badge in my pocket, I bounded over to verse my rival, got killed by his first Pokemon due to low health, then beat him the next time. Although I wasn't really threatened during this battle or felt like I was ever gonna lose, despite my massive level advantage, this battle was still a little bit tricky and a really bad sign for things to come. Moving on, I straight up ignored Route 212, and spoilers, you never go there once. I also dodged the Unknown Cave as you don't need to get defog, quickly arriving at Veilstone. I went to the gym, saw Crash Awake, the 5th gym leader, leave, and figured it would be smarter for me to battle him first as he's going to be easier than the fighting gym. I made my way all the way to Pastoria City, only for my rival to tell me he's not there. So I made my way back to Veilstone and attempted the fighting gym, which I wasn't really excited about. So entering the gym I was concerned, and it turns out rightly so, because this gym was a total bitch, in a way that Gardenia wasn't. Firstly, my over-leveled nature actually kind of worked against me because my recent evolution made me Steel type, making this yet another gym where I'm weak to the gym's type. But having 10 levels on Mainline's Pokemon makes me quite strong, and if Empoleon wasn't quite this jacked, this may have been the end of the run. But there are more reasons why this gym sucks, mainly because retrying battles takes forever. Inside the gym there's a puzzle which involves pushing these slow ass punching bags around and knocking out the weights. An incredibly tedious task that is boring to do once. There's also a spinner that you need to avoid every single time you do this, making every single re-battle an arduous affair to even attend. As boring as all of that is, getting to Meuing is where the real hurt begins. The first Pokemon off the block is Meditite, which Cut does decent damage to, but Meditite has Drain Punch, so it heals a lot. This means that I would straight up lose to Meditite a fair bit. Other times it would just chunk me down massively. Now I will say, if you get quote unquote lucky and beat Gardenia before you level up a bunch, Meditite may legitimately be a full-on block in your way, because if you can't out-damage its healing from Drain Punch, the only move it ever does apart from Fake Out, then you're done. It's game over, and you're just sort of waiting for lucky crits and misses. But at level 40 I was able to beat it, although beating it doesn't reap the best reward, only 500 experience, which is comparatively better than Turtwig's XP game, but similarly not blasting you up through the levels, so leveling is slow. Fortunately, it didn't take me long before I could two-shot Meditite consistently and could also take out Machoke as well. Machoke isn't super difficult or anything. Karate Chop does do quite a lot of damage, but you do quite a lot of damage too. So it really just becomes a case of leveling up until you can beat it, which won't take long. Next up though is Lucario, which is actually great because Lucario is also Steel typing. So my go-to move, Rock Smash, the move that's been legitimately carrying me through the game, is instantly coming in clutch. Again. Normally I was in the red when I got there and was instantly KO'd, but I noticed that eventually I had enough health to survive a single Force Palm, which does 35 to 45 damage, and my Rock Smash does around half. So I really only needed to wait until the RNG fell my way, or I continued to get a little bulkier to tank one more hit. 4 level increases, 45 minutes of real time, and a cool 15 attempts later, and I managed to one-shot the Lucario with only 2 health left, and unexpectedly beat the gym on a run I thought was dead. Which was great because this gym was much more draining than Gardenia's, because the puzzle was really boring to do, even with fast forward. All in all, despite all the reattempts, this section only clocked up 71 fails. After Gym 4, you are able to pretty easily move to Gym 5. You quickly help Dawn defeat some Galactic Grunts, you battle your rival outside the gym, who isn't an issue, then you need to battle 4 trainers inside the gym. But after only 1200 steps, you are at the next gym leader, which, despite being more than 10 levels lower than you, is also kind of a bitch to fight. Right off the bat, Gyarados comes out with Intimidate, which lowers your attack, making your already shit attacks even worse, leaving you with your only special attack being Bubble, a move which isn't going to be really all that helpful in a water-type gym. Shocking. After messing around a bit, the tactic I started going with was using Rock Smash to lower Gyarados' defense stage by 1, then using Cut. If you don't get the stage lowering on one of your first turns, then you're in trouble because it will use Waterfall, which does a pretty solid job of smacking you down. Despite the damage against you, Gyarados is pretty easy to kill most times, which means you are at least getting some experience, which is good because the next Pokemon out is surprisingly tough. Quagsire rolls out, and this bulky tuner roll is by far the worst part of this fight. Because Quagsire has lower special defense than defense, and your attack has been lowered, I found that using Bubble was usually better than doing the classic Rock Smash strategy. I also found that using Growl once at the start of the fight helped keep me alive a bit, a tactic I also used with Gyarados and even Turtwig. Although for both of them, I wouldn't say it was definitively better. Sometimes it seemed like it was good, sometimes it seemed like it didn't really make a difference. Overall, I would say it was a net positive to Growl on the first turn, but it definitely wasn't jumping out to me as like a necessity or some genius move. I also tried growling multiple times, but this just led to me taking too many hits and worked against me. So one major issue with Quagsire is that you do like no damage to it. This is bad because Quagsire has Mudshot, which is super effective against you and will slowly work away at your health. Combine this with whatever damage Gyarados has done, and more often than not, Quagsire was killing me. Which is really annoying because it means you only get one Pokemon worth of XP per fight. Quagsire also has Yawn, and if it uses Yawn, you're fucked. There's nothing you can do, that's just an instant dead attempt. On top of this, as always, if any Pokemon ever gets in the red, then Wake uses a Hyper Potion, which means you need to try to avoid them getting in the red and try finishing them from the orange. So sometimes it's wise to use Cut or Rock Smash to do less damage in order to avoid the potion usage. The vast majority of the time, I never made it past Quagsire, and when I did, I always had really low health at Floatzel, which would just kill me. Now, Floatzel basically can't do any real damage to you. All of its attacks are not very effective against you, which is amazing. This gives you a little bit of time to get off Rock Smashes and hope for some defense lowering. Floatzel also has a berry, so if you get it in the red or the orange, it will be healed, and this is something you're likely to do because you're not doing that much damage to it. Overall, it seems much more manageable than Quagsire, and it always feels like if you get a good Quagsire fight, then maybe have half health, then you could do it. But the problem is, you never really have a good Quagsire fight, so you just need to level up a bunch to be strong enough to quickly kill Gyarados, then kill Quagsire quick enough while tanking its Mudshots. Eventually, I got lucky. I ended up using Growl on Floatzel, which meant that it was doing basically no damage. It took me down to 5 health, and because it was faster, all Wake had to do was attack, like any attack. But he played it safe, deciding to use a Hyper Potion instead, and fortune fell my way, giving me a crit and a one-hit KO because I had lowered its defense with Rock Smash previously, ending the fight on my 33rd attempt, a gym that took slightly less time than the 4th gym to beat, despite me racking up over double the attempts. And this gym also had a puzzle which you needed to complete each time, a puzzle which required a fair bit of walking and added almost 10,000 steps to my completion of this section. That's just how slow and shit the 4th gym's puzzle is. And right now, I will say the worst part of this challenge isn't all the re-attempts or the battles. Honestly, that's not really an issue. But having to redo the really boring and unimpressive puzzles over and over again is kind of a massive turnoff for this run. But with fast mode, I don't think it's the worst.
Anyway, we say goodbye to this section, only garnering 125 fails, which is still a lot, but Gardenia's 1,000,001 attempts really warps your perception about it.
The next portion of the game involves quite a lot of story stuff. For comparison, Gym 4 and Gym 5 combine to only have 5 dialogue fails between them, while Gym 6 has 19 by itself. Anyway, you delete this galactic grunt, you cure the Psyducks of their headaches, you defeat a galactic commander, you talk to this grandma, you learn about Palkia and Dialga, a bunch of things, all of which is pretty easy. The game intends you to also fly back to Jubilife to make it not an issue at all, but because we don't need fly, we just left it there in the warehouse. So this is a little bit difficult, and it's not just because the walking is boring. The main difficulty here is going back through the routes and avoiding all the trainers you've left. All the roads are littered with trainers you've never versed, and they are waiting to be activated. So you need to be really careful and specific with your routing to make sure you don't accidentally verse someone you don't need to. Spinners are especially annoying because they're erratic and don't have a pattern that you just learn. They're just random. But I made sure to make a lot of Nintendo certified save states for when I inevitably messed up. And something I will say that surprised me about this challenge is how few battles you really need to do, especially wild Pokemon. I just walked from Pastoria City all the way to Celestic Town, then back to Canaval City, wading through tall grass, plundering caves, and sailing across the ocean, and I only encountered 11 wild Pokemon, which feels really low.
It kind of goes to show when you aren't battling every trainer or trying to explore every single nook and cranny, you can cut out so much of the game. Which I guess I knew because I've watched speedrunners, but it still surprised me.
Anyway, once you make your way back to where you need to go, it's time to learn the new HM you were just given, Serve, which is amazing. Finally, you are equipped with a legitimately strong move, arguably Empoleon's most consistently strong move in general. So all of a sudden, you get a huge power spike and you're able to just clear through the next portion of the game with ease. The rival on the bridge basically one-shot everything. The multiple trainers in the gym and the gym leader themselves,
Not a problem. I mean, this was the first point in the game when PowerPoint management was starting to cross my mind. And there's honestly not much to say about Byron. He has a Magnemite with Thunderbolt, which does decent damage, but you just one-shot it with Surf, no problem. Then you have Steelix and Bastardon, which are both slower than you and just get one-shot with Surf. So really not much of a challenge, making this section fairly fast despite all of the walking and the story, tallying only 71 fails and 3,487 steps. So after beating this gym, you need to head over to Iron Island and pick up HM4 Strength, which feels like a good time to look forward to the future and discuss HMs. Assuming we are able to get the last 2 badges and make it to Victory Road, we are going to need 5 different HMs to be able to make it all the way through and get to the Elite 4. These are Strength, Rock Smash, Rock Climb, Surf, and Waterfall. Now before I talk about the solution, I think there's a valid argument to make that when you get to the point in the game where you need to use the HM Rock Climb and can't, that's the actual end of the run. Because what I'm about to explain is definitely a heightening of breaking the rules. Being able to use a necessary item is one thing, but what we're about to talk about is a whole nother level. So we should recognize that from here on out, this is an alternate version of the run, one that actually gives you a fighting chance. And the real run would involve Empoleon soloing it until they get to a cliff face they can't manage to mount sometime after the 7th gym badge. With that said, to even have a chance of becoming champion, clearly we are required to get a second Pokemon. But the so-called correct solution to this is the messiest and most interpretable part of the entire run. The seemingly easiest solution would to be just catch a Pokemon, but I'm not really a fan of this because it's not consistent and doesn't feel like it's in the spirit of the challenge. Now, ensuring this challenge is consistent and replicable isn't really a concern or even an aim, but it feels like it's an issue here because firstly, which Pokemon are you going to catch? You could catch the classic Gen 4 HM dumb Pokemon, Bibarel, but you can't actively encounter wild Pokemon, and honestly, you aren't countering too many, so there's a good chance you won't even run into one. So do you walk around until you find one, or do you just settle for any Pokemon that can fit this role? And even if you do encounter a Pokemon that can fill the gap, you only have 5 Pokeballs, so there's a chance you don't catch it. I mean, you probably will, but you might not. And if you run out of Pokeballs, do you buy more? If you have no money, which is likely because you constantly white out, do you quickly verse some trainers to get some? And all of this just feels weird and not good. I mean, maybe you even strategically plan to catch the most impactful Pokemon, because if you're required to get one, you may as well make it the best option, right? But all of this starts to dismantle the challenge, because you could use this sort of, oh, it's only one time I'm breaking the rules and I have to do it to continue sort of reasoning in lots of different situations. Oh, I can't get past this trainer, let me quickly level up on some of the non-compulsory trainers. Or I'm just gonna grab Blizzard so Empoleon has a really powerful move, just in case we need it. Or I'll use a potion just this once. But all of this just sort of resembles a regular run. Making decisions to optimize your position to get through the game is not what this challenge is about. And sure, this challenge is partly about having the least amount of fails, and these tactics might achieve less fails, but I would have had a lot less fails if I just used potions in my fight against Gardenia and won the first time around, or allowed myself to learn Peck. But all of this feels gross. So catching a Pokemon isn't the preferred option. Luckily, the game does provide us with 4 Pokemon you can get without catching them, which are Togepi, Eevee, Porygon, and Riolu. Eevee and Porygon would be way better options because they start at a higher level, but both of these require you to go out of your way to talk to someone, and this feels the same as going out of your way to grab an optional item. Next we have Riolu, which would be the strongest Pokemon as it can evolve into Lucario and would be amazing. And congrats to you, you hot detective. I just happened to bring up this whole spiel when we talked to Riley about getting strength, the guy who also happens to give you the Riolu egg. So we are of course not getting Riolu, because that requires you to do the entire Iron Island, and that's way too much optional stuff. This leaves us with Togepi, which is given to us in a unique way. Unlike the others, Togepi's egg is received after the second gym when Cynthia walks up to you and gives you the chance to take it. Because accepting the egg counts as an item fail, you would normally have to reject it. It also adds 2 extra fails when it hatches and when it gives you the option to nickname it. Overall though, these 3 total fails are the least of any other options. More than just that, it is something that will happen in any version of this run and means that it isn't luck-based or random. Most importantly though, I think it fits with the ethos of this very stupid and weirdly specific run.
Togepi can learn exactly 1 HM, Rock Smash, which means that between them and Empoleon, we can get all 5 required HMs and make our way through Victory Road.
It's not perfect though, because this does mean we have to go to the move deleter to remove Cut and Rock Smash from Empoleon, but to me, this is the most reasonable solution. So why am I bringing this up now? We only just beat the 6th gym and haven't even taught Empoleon its 4th HM move. How is this relevant? Well, because Togepi has only just become relevant.
Since you receive the egg, it will be in your party the whole time. And for me, and I'm sure many others, it'll hatch around the 4th gym, either before or during one of your many re-attempts. But because Togepi starts at level 1 and has no offensive moves, it can't do anything, and there's no way to level it up. You can't switch train it or give it the XP share, and it can't kill anything on its own, and the only way it even gets into battle is if Empoleon is already dead. Quick side note, I did change the game to set battle mode so you don't constantly get asked to throw them in and in turn incur a bunch of extra dialogue fails. You do get a couple of fails from going to the menu, but it's worth it. Also, I think this is acceptable because it doesn't make the run easier or anything, it just decreases the amount of fails. Also, to balance this out, every time you do need to switch into Togepi after Empoleon dies, that counts as 1 fail, and seeing as Togepi is completely useless, this only serves to increase the amount of fails.
Of course, it would be better to deposit Togepi into the PC, but that feels like a complete break of the rules much more than simply changing a setting. Now you could say, well, can't you teach it Rock Smash? You need to teach it Rock Smash anyway, and I guess, but I've always taught the HM right before I needed to, because I only teach it out of necessity and not to help my gameplay. So I went through Rourke without Rock Smash and Gardenia without Cut, even though Cut especially might have been useful. The reason I bring this up now is because only on the way to Carnival City has Togepi managed to do something in a battle that isn't just instantly die. Up until now, there's only been 1 possible double battle, but this occurred before you are likely to have hatched the egg. It occurs with these 2 people looking across from each other. But something I found out on this run is if you only have 1 Pokemon, then double battles don't activate. Now in the case of 2 separate trainers like this, they just battle you back to back, but for these twins, because they have to battle together, the game won't proc the battle if you have 1 Pokemon. And this is usually a mandatory battle, but when you only have Empoleon and the egg, you can just saunter past. So when you come back through on your way to the 6th gym, you will have a 2nd Pokemon and the battle will happen. Unfortunately, they only have baby Pokemon, so you get like no experience, but you get enough to become level 6, giving Togepi the move Metronome. This basically brings Togepi into play as a Pokemon, as it now has a way to do damage, and in turn, level up. Sure, it's likely going to get one-shot by everything, but there's a way it can get experience. Still, this little XP boost is super fortuitous, as there is instantly another double battle straight away. This time it's with these 2 trainers after Cycle Road, which you can avoid when you go through the cave, but you can't on the way back. I retried this battle to see if there's a strategy to kill both Pokemon, and there isn't anything reliable. Bubble will take out Chimchar, but not Pachirisu. So you can wait for the crit, but that feels cheap. Targeting Pachirisu doesn't seem to make a difference, as both Pokemon seem like they always attack Togepi. The reasoning though that leveling up before is fortuitous is because if Togepi is at level 1, Pachirisu would just quick attack Togepi and it wouldn't get any experience. Anyway, I tried this battle about 10 times and Pachirisu used Spark every time and Chimchar used Flame Wheel. Both will one-shot Togepi. One time, Chimchar used Ember, and because of the 2 level ups from the Pachirisu kill, Togepi could tank it, but this was hard to replicate, so I think the strat is just kill Pachirisu because it gives more experience and get to level 8. It's not great, and killing Chimchar only gets you to level 9, which is still terrible after fighting 4 level 20 Pokemon, but hey, it puts you on the map.
And from here on out, we have a Pokemon which might be able to actually get some levels and may be able to help us in the future.
but we'll see how true that turns out to actually be. Apart from Togepi becoming relevant now, there's another reason I bring up HMs and needing another Pokemon at the 6th gym. For this to work, we need to delete Cut and Rock Smash off Empoleon, and the move deleter happens to be here in Carnival. At first, I figured I'd use the cross the bridge when it comes to an approach. So I'd do the Team Galactic stuff, get the 7th badge, then delete Cut when I needed Rock Climb and delete Rock Smash when I needed Waterfall. And I think this approach is valid, but this means you have to go from Snow Point City all the way back to Carnival City when you want to learn Rock Climb, and you need to go from Sunyshore City all the way back to Carnival City when you want to learn Waterfall, encountering a ton more fails and ultimately just being really fucking boring because you have to walk the whole way. So we're going to delete both Rock Smash and Cut now, which leads to a wild moveset of only Surf and Growl. A moveset which for me was quickly made a little saucier because you learn a Hydro Pump at level 59, and I just happened to be level 58. Alright, we've been here at the 6th gym discussing strategy for quite some time, so let's blast through the actual game. Go to the lakes and defeat the various galactic commanders. At Lake Verity, you'll do 2 battles. If you're lucky enough to have managed to level up to level 59 in between the 6th gym and now, which is hard to do as you only have 1 battle and a few wild encounters to do so, you'll get Hydro Pump. If you hit all of your Hydro Pumps, you can get Togepi to level 14, and it will evolve. The reason it evolves at such a low level in this challenge is because it evolves from happiness, and if it's been in your party since Gym 4, then you've taken around 25,000 steps with it, all of which adds to its happiness. If you don't become level 59 before these double battles, you'll have to use Surf and will kill Togepi, and won't be able to level it up and have it become Togetic, all but dooming its usability. Anyway, go to Mount Coronet, teach Empoleon strength, go through the mountain, pick up Rock Climb in the snowstorm, verse the gym. It's really easy. I'm not even going to say anything about it. You can basically beat the gym at full health without much issue.
Only collecting 89 fails for the section.
After beating the gym, you need to Rock Climb up this wall, and this is where the run would die if you don't use Togepi. But we're in the timeline where we teach it. So go up, see your rival, head to Veilstone to defeat Team Galactic in their own base, like a bunch of fucking losers. On my way, Togetic got its first legit kill against this level 16 Machop. I had this fun moment in a double battle where I leveled up just enough to make Togetic survive taking a hit. Then it used Metronome and used Fly, which let me use Empoleon Surf, with Togetic avoiding the attack, letting me take out all 4 Pokemon, sharing that juicy XP, getting Togetic to level 17, and meaning the possibility that they might be useful is very much alive. At this point, there'll be a couple different double battles, and the strategy is always the same. Try to take out one trainer really fast, then once it's in a 1v2, Empoleon would outspeed everything, and Togetic is safe. And this strategy works fairly well. The next part is basically just going through the game. Go to Cyrus and roll over him. Go to the next commander and roll over them. Free the Pokemon. Heading back to Mount Coronet, Togetic actually got its first lucky finish off on this level 39 Machoke, which is nice to see that this can happen. Keep going, verse a bunch of Team Galactic, make your way through Giratina's mindfuck puzzle. I will note, I didn't consider each movement pad a fail, even though it sort of activates a cutscene, for the same reason I don't consider jumping down a ledge a fail, or the teleporters. It's just part of movement, and it's something you are constantly failing. Anyway, kill Giratina, make your way all the way back to Professor Owen, then head to the 8th gym. Finally, we get to the last gym, and this is something to be concerned about. It's the Electric Gym, and Volkner's team is pretty strong. Now, I do have a 20-ish level advantage, but the gym can still cause trouble. This was proven true immediately. Volkner's first Pokemon is a Jolteon, a Pokemon which is faster than Empoleon and will use Thunder Wave, paralyzing Empoleon and halving its speed, meaning that the subsequent Pokemon, Raichu, Manectric, and Electrovivre, are all going to get at least one hit off, and they pack a punch and will fuck you up. Combine in any turn when you don't move from paralysis, and you're in for a terrible time. I was scared and ready for the long haul, as my second battle ended at Raichu, the second Pokemon, and my level 21 flying type Togetic wasn't about to step up and clutch it. Even though you can one-shot everything with Hydro Pump, I figured we'd be back to the old song of dance we've experienced with gym leaders before, versing them again and again until you're high enough level you can eke out a win, although this felt more doable than the likes of Wade and Maylene. But this didn't happen because on my third attempt attempt, Jolteon used Charge Beam instead of Thunder Wave, which did like 40 damage. Then I just one-shot the rest of the team with Hydro Pump. So, cool, not really a challenge at all. If you don't have Hydro Pump and only have Surf, the gym is still a breeze, as long as Jolteon doesn't paralyze you. So, yeah, awesome, all 8 badges, da-da-da-da!
And so marks the end of Gym 8, so far our second worst section yet, racking up a total of 164 fails.
After beating all 8 gyms, make your way to Victory Road, which altogether isn't overly difficult. The main struggle I was having was not having enough power points, because you are required to fight all wild Pokemon, and about 9 trainers, so you will run very low on available moves. The wild Pokemon aren't an issue, because many are weak to water, and the Golbats and Floatzel go down in one hit. So this works out to just be some quick extra leveling. This is also where you'll teach Togetic Rock Smash, finally giving it a regular attacking move. The only actual roadblock in the entire Victory Road is this guy with a Tangrowth, who you can't even 2-hit. So it gets the chance to get a couple power whips off, and these are really damaging. I got lucky on my second attempt and it missed one of the attacks, so I went through it no problem. Power whip missing though isn't super surprising since it only has 85% accuracy. I can see this guy being a little bit frustrating because he's at the end of the cave, so every time you lose you have to make your way all the way back through and fight another 12 or so wild Pokemon, but he shouldn't take more than 5 attempts. After this, you'll leave the cave, make your way up the waterfall, and head onto the Elite Four, where before this, you'll need to verse your rival one last time. He has 6 Pokemon and will lower your attack with Intimidate as always, which is a little annoying, but I just used Surf a bunch and he went down. He did almost manage to kill Empoleon though, and this makes me a little bit scared because each Pokemon does a little bit of damage, slowly chunking down Empoleon, and now we have to go through 26 in a row. So let's begin the Elite Four, the real test of this challenge. I always figured I'd be able to get here, and sure, there were challenges along the way, and to a degree, we didn't even really get here. But we are here with a level 75 Empoleon and a level 21 Togetic.
The big question is, can Empoleon one-shot enough Pokemon and endure enough hits to defeat 26 in a row without healing? Empoleon is slow and will inevitably be outsped, letting some Pokemon get some hits off, which might be really hefty blows or might be barely a scratch. There's also going to be some Pokemon which Empoleon just can't one-shot. And unlike before, the level cap of 100 is really starting to come into play. If Empoleon can't do this by level 100, then we are just hoping that we can level up a level 21 Togetic. But seeing as they get one-shot by everything, that might not be realistic.
Diving into our first Elite Four member Aaron, we are going against a bug type who actually causes a decent amount of issues. Firstly, Yanmega. If you don't one-shot it, then it can persist with double team plus speed boost and become a real issue. One run I straight up died on this Pokemon because I could never hit it. But after some leveling, Surf can one-shot, so this should be okay. Next is Heracross, which is the first example of being chipped away at, because it will use close combat and that's rather effective. So you will want to one-shot this as fast as possible. Vespiquen is a tanky version of this and is really hard to one-shot and will even get attacks off, which don't do much damage, but any damage is something you want to avoid. The next two are fairly easy to one-shot and not that bad. The next two trainers are pretty chill as they are ground and fire types respectively, but both have Pokemon that can do this reviled chunk damage. Bertha starts with Whiscash, which defensively is kind of a unit and really hard to one-shot, and if you don't, it will use Earth Power, and that will once again really chunk you down. After this though, the rest of the team drops with either Surf or Waterfall, not anything to be scared of. And it won't be too long before you level up enough where you can one-shot everything, including Whiscash. Next up we have Flynn, who has some really fast fire types. The main threats here are Infernape and Rapidash. Infernape has Earthquake and will outspeed you, and Rapidash will do the same with Flare Blitz. And this 2-hit combo knocked me out a couple times, but after leveling up, some use start to outspeed and you can similarly one-shot everything. This means we get to Lucian, who is a Psychic type trainer and has a devastating 2-power combo, Gallade and Alakazam. Gallade is weirdly tanky and can take a hit. It will also heal with a berry, then use Drain Punch, which means that it sometimes takes 2 or 3 hits to kill, all while doing solid damage. I realized that it had pretty bad defense, so it's good to do waterfall, but even then it can take a hit for a while. Alakazam, on the other hand, is an easy one-shot, but it will outspeed you, and it will get off Focus Blast, a high-power, super effective move, which will significantly lower your health. Together, these posed quite a potent threat and wiped me out a number of times. But eventually, as always, I started to outspeed and one-shot. Well, at least the Gallade. Alakazam always outsped me, but at least they could tank the Focus Blast. Lastly, we have Cynthia, often regarded as the hardest champion from any game. Her first Pokemon, Spiritomb, is tanky for a little bit, but then can get one-shot. This brings us to Garchomp, Cynthia's strongest Pokemon, and unsurprisingly, the biggest threat. So Garchomp can outspeed you, and it will hit you with Earthquake, which if you've taken a couple hits, ends you easy enough.
After Garchomp, the next obstacle is Milotic, as you can one-shot everything else on Cynthia's team. But Milotic can't really do any damage to you, so my first run beating Garchomp was my last run, as I managed to beat Cynthia and became the champion of Sinnoh region. And without too much struggle, and after just 12 attempts of the Elite Four in the champion, I managed to beat the game. I thought this might be a little more difficult and that I may not actually even be able to get past Cynthia. But Empoleon is actually bulky enough that it can take most hits, and the moveset of Waterfall, Surf, Rock Climb, and Strength is actually pretty solid, so it can take down most Pokemon with ease. And while there were a few struggles early on, it always felt like if we just kept leveling up and kept getting stronger, that victory would be inevitable, which is exactly how it went down. Also, I know there is quite a lot of endgame content, especially in Pokemon Platinum, and I'm really excited to play this, and I will, because there are quite a lot of really tough battles that we won't just be able to rely on winning through being way over-leveled. We'll need to actually strategize and plan to see how we can get through those battles, but I'll be releasing all the endgame content in its own video. A video where we'll find out which gym leaders with their upgraded teams we can actually beat, and which one, no matter how many re-attempts we do, we can't. So can you beat Pokemon Platinum only using Pokemon? No, like literally no, you can't even get past the title screen. And even when you do expand out the definition to accepting failures and doing all of that stuff, I still think taking on Togepi and going to the move deleter is slightly outside of the actual realm, so the run does realistically fail after the 7th gym badge when you need to use Rock Climb. A part of me does wish that Togepi came into play more, but it's okay that they only were used for their HM, that's fine. In fact, it's good that they existed because it means that the workaround for 5 HMs was a lot easier and simpler. This also does mean that you would never want Togepi to level up to avoid fails from leveling up, gaining moves, and evolution. I didn't talk about that in the video because I wanted it to work, but that's what you would actually do. Let's take some time to look at the final stats of the challenge, all the ways we failed and how many times we did. In total, we racked up 1,223 fails, with an extra 60,119 steps. Not the cleanest of challenge runs. But let's break down these stats by category and by section. Kicking off with the 5 major categories, we have the least contributing category, with items, only causing 62 fails. Throughout the game, we were forced to take 38 items, 13 of which were required to beat the game, and 25 of which were absolutely useless. We also picked up 4 mandatory items, and in total, we needed to use items 20 times. With the 4th least amount of fails, we have Meuing, which is basically carried by the 90 choices we were forced to make throughout the game. We had to open the menu 12 times, we changed 3 settings, and we touched the touchpad once. Next up we have dialogue, which added on an extra 150 fails. These were pretty cleanly distributed, 52 of these were cutscenes, 39 of them were mandatory conversations someone else started, and 59 of these were mandatory conversations we initiated. Although a lot of these weren't actual conversations and were when we talked to the water, rocks, or trees to initiate using HMs. The category that contributed the second most amount of fails is the Pokemon category, being responsible for 205 total fails. Over half of this was from leveling up, which is 108 fails, 13 fails were from learning moves, 10 were from moves we rejected, rejected, 2 were moves we deleted, and 3 fails were from evolutions. Togepi also added 69 fails by needing to be switched in after Empoleon fainted. Lastly, we have the big source themselves, Pokemon battles, of which we did 476, 236 of which were simply reattempts of battles we had previously failed. This is a lot, but it's worse when you consider that 151 of those battles were wild Pokemon, and not even something you can retry, meaning that we were only required to do 89 battles. The bulk of these were regular trainers coming in at 46, Team Galactic had their fair share with 17 battles against grunts and 9 against commanders. Then there's the 6 rival battles, the 8 gym leaders, the Elite 4, plus the champion. And between the 236 reattempts, Gardenia made up 124 of those by herself, with Wake, Maylene, and Gardenia making up 171 reattempts as a trio. This is how the 5 major categories stacked up against each other in their totality. Also, I counted it outside any of the other categories, but whiting out added another 220 fails. When we break down the individual sections, we have the first gym and the last 2 gyms being quite high in their representation. This makes sense because the early game has lots of dialogue and small random stuff you have to do, amping up the totals. The 8th gym has a ridiculous amount of story and a massive amount of dialogue, plus I ran into a stupidly high 43 wild Pokemon, so it makes sense it has so many fails. The Elite 4 section also has a lot of fails because Victory Road has a bunch of HM usage, plus wild Pokemon, plus every time you would go against the Elite 4, you would really add up the amount of battle reattempts you were doing. And yet, despite this, Gym 2 looms over all of these with over double any other section, an absolute monster of a section, unsurprisingly carried by the 134 wideouts and 132 battle reattempts required. The mid-game is fairly straightforward and fast, with Gym 3 winning the prize for the least problematic section, only contributing 39 fails to the tally. Well, that's the video, and that's a Pokemon-only challenge. Would I suggest it? I mean, probably not. I had a lot of fun with it, and if you want a challenge that'll make you play Pokemon in a way that you never had before, then it's great, but it can be a little tedious at times. With that said, I did always feel like I was making progress, and even when I was failing, it always felt like I was closer to succeeding, which I eventually always did. And winning against Gardenia, Wake, Maylene, and Cynthia was really, really rewarding and felt like I had earned that victory, a feeling which I don't really get when I play Pokemon normally. Yet the challenge also isn't stressful, say like a Nuzlocke can be. There's no real consequence for losing, you just keep going. So it's not the type of challenge where a single mistake is going to ruin the run. No, as long as you keep playing and keep pushing forward, you will make progress and you will complete it. And if you have fast forward mode enabled, then you can probably do it in 10 hours or 5 if you're being particularly quick about it. So feel free to do this challenge yourself, and please let me know. I would love to know what someone else's experience is like. If you are still here, then massive shout out to you. I really, really appreciate it. Like the video, comment about your favorite parts, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. Also, I fully intend on doing this challenge for all the other Pokemon games, and I've already completed it for Soul Silver, and oh my god, that is an entirely different kettle of fish. Anyway, thank you for watching the video, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye!